Might play Persona 5 tonight.
It's a good game.
Very good
You
game.
have to finish it so we can actually talk about it. This is the frustrating thing about, like, waiting for you to finish games so I can actually talk to you about them. Because you're really the only other gamer that I know.
Yeah.
So, like, you know.
I know. And I've got to finish Final Fantasy.
Other than Sim. Sim's the other. Sim and Brad. But, yeah.
And I really want to finish Alien. Alien's fucking good.
Alien.
Yeah. Alien
Isolation?
Yeah. Very fucking good. I've got a very good game. Very good game.
Yeah.
Very good Sega game. But, like, stealth.
Yeah.
On board a ship. All that nostalgic, you know, old style spaceship. Yeah, fucking awesome.
Yeah, because it's set, like, in the same place as, like, the original Alien, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I remember reading somewhere, and I'm probably going to get this horrifically wrong, but I think I remember reading somewhere that there was something like there's two AIs operating at the same time for the alien. So one knows where you are all the time.
Yeah.
And one sort of controls the frequency of, like, sort of events. So it's always sort of in the region that you are. It's always sort of, Because it got great reviews, eh? Like, it got great reviews. The you know.
I haven't seen the Alien yet. And I've been playing for quite a while. It's quite,
building up the tension.
Yeah. It's very cool.
See, I reckon that's way scarier than, like, you know, when there's just hundreds of them and, you know, that sort of stuff. Like that building up that tension around the one thing. Like, you know, it's again like you know, we were talking about in the last podcast, we were talking about, like, the Headless Horseman for me. Like, you know, that whole.
It's the unknown.
Yeah. Like, I mean, he doesn't even really appear, I don't think, in the sort of original story. He doesn't sort of appear till much later on. Like, it's all just the fear of the dark, the fear of the Headless Horseman. Like, you know.
Yeah.
It always freaked me out, the whole idea that he, like, took your head, like, and like left a pumpkin or something, wasn't it? Like a jack-o'-lantern?
Yeah,
like,
it was a jack-o'-lantern. Yeah.
Oh my god. Scared the crap out of me. Like seriously. Like, I seriously still have this, like, irrational fear of the Headless Horseman.
Yeah. Sleepy Hollow. I think I remember that original one.
See, I watched Sleepy Hollow, the Johnny Depp one. Yeah. I didn't actually find that scary. No. I don't know why. It just it wasn't that scary.
It was released at a time when movies were a bit as well. Like, they didn't.
Yeah. Well, anyway, welcome along to, this is episode 8 of Esoterica. Our 2-month anniversary, Anthony. It's all very lovely in here. What's slightly bizarre is that we are actually recording this episode just after we recorded episode 7. We're recording it straight away because, unlike some other podcasts, who shall remain nameless, we have decided to continue giving you content the whole way through Christmas and New Year. So apologies if, you know, I don't know. So this will be coming out to you on New Year's Eve. So apologies if the world has ended by this particular point in time, or some, like, catastrophic, like, news article has happened that, you know. And here we will just automatically upload the lighthearted podcast, and, like, you know, I don't know, nuclear Armageddon has happened somewhere in between Christmas and New Year. But we thought, after having a bit of a conversation on the last podcast, talking about nostalgia and stuff, we kind of started to go down the track of things like computer games, point and click computer games, and that sort of stuff, other pieces of nostalgic stuff for us. So we thought we might carry on, seeing as this is New Year's Eve, and obviously you're all putting off going out to your parties and things like that tonight to catch up on the latest episode of Esoterica. Before you leave, we thought we'd sort of carry on our conversation about nostalgia, about things that make us nostalgic, or things that we remember from our childhoods, or maybe not even from our childhoods, but just, you know, sort of seminal points in time, or you know, that sort of stuff. So we were talking a bit about point and click adventure games, weren't we? We were talking a bit about Monkey Island, like Curse of Monkey Island. I can't remember. Curse of Monkey Island is the only. Every time I try to think of Monkey Island games, Curse of Monkey Island is the only like.
It's the Secret of Monkey Island.
The Secret of Monkey Island. Just Monkey Island was the first one, wasn't it, or something?
Yeah. So a bit of background for maybe some younger listeners who might not have experienced.
How dare you be young?
No, but I mean, you might not have experienced your 90s point-and-click adventure games. So this was a really interesting time because this is when video games in the 90s were making a transition from 8-bit gaming to 16-bit gaming. And now you have 32-bit and 64-bit, and you get, So this is when sprites, the use of sprites became more dense. You could use more sprites. So as you know from your old 80s computer games or late 70s arcade games, they had a limited amount of data they could work with. So that's why you got your blocky characters. And you've actually seen with a lot of recent indie games, they've tried to recapture that.
Actually, here's an interesting gaming fact for you. What is it one with the is it Asteroid, the one with the aliens that come down?
Space Invaders.
Why did I not remember Space Invaders? Do you know why they get faster and faster? It actually wasn't
a bug, isn't it?
No, it wasn't built into the game, right? The reason they get faster and faster is because the machines and stuff that they put them on struggle to process that many characters on the screen at the same time, and as you eliminate them, it has to work with less and less and less, so the game speeds up because it can now process that information. And so obviously, since gaming consoles and stuff like that are so much more powerful, now they've built it into the game that happens, but it wasn't supposed to happen like that originally. It was just because, as I said, because all of a sudden all the processing power was freed up, because you'd got rid of. Yeah. It wasn't having to deal with all of those aliens at the same time. So that's why it got faster and faster, because I got, there you go. There's an interesting retro gaming fact.
So you went from these 8-bit games on, you had consoles like the Famicom and the Super Nintendo Entertainment System.
NES, I had one of those.
The Atari 2600. These were the consoles.
This is my childhood, mate. Yeah.
And they sold hundreds of thousands.
Oh yeah,
millions for the SNES and things. So then the personal computer became more prevalent, especially in the late 80s, early 90s, when Windows 3.1 came out.
Yep.
And then personal computing became a household item around Windows 95.
Yep.
Windows 95 broke computing into the mainstream.
Yep.
So at that point, this is when, and before Windows 95 is back when you would get games on big floppy disks, and you would have to install multiple disks, or
MS-DOS.
Yeah. You would have to use the... it sends a shiver down my spine thinking of having to install games using the MS-DOS command line with your C:// run DOS.
For all you youngsters who turn on a computer and go, we just put it in here and it runs. So
download on Steam or something.
Yeah, so back in the days, you actually had to have a basic understanding of basic programming in order to run command prompts and things like that on Microsoft DOS. Which you see every now and then, when you run something on your computer and a little black window appears with command lines and stuff like that.
Your legacy code from Windows.
Yeah, that was MS-DOS. You had to sort of be able to understand a basic level of computing in order to run anything, in order to do anything on a computer. Sorry.
Yeah, that's it. And it's only really recently where Windows has actually started to change all that from the ground up. So for a very long time, you still had that legacy stuff running in the background to boot games. Yeah. And everyone will remember trying to run something like the original Wolfenstein, typing in wolf.exe execute, and then that booting the game, and then, and accidentally deleting folders when you're trying to install. And it was a whole rigmarole of trying to, and I remember having instructions. This is back when games came with big thick manuals instructions.
Half of it was how to install and run the game.
Exactly. And so what ended up happening was so you got a little bit more RAM to play around with. You got 128 kilobytes of RAM and and so things got really exciting in the 90s. So you started to get more detailed games. So what this meant however, was that there were still limitations. And one of these limitations were 3D graphics were only really kind of starting to come in the mid-90s.
Yep.
So you had some 3D games, but they're pretty basic. It wasn't really until the likes of things like Quake, where true 3D, you had 2.5D games like Doom and Wolfenstein, which kind of tricked you into thinking they were 3D, but they were quite clever in how they did that. So, however, the 90s adventure game, the mid-90s, early 90s, late 90s, the golden age of adventure gaming. So,
and LucasArts massively,
LucasArts were amazing because LucasArts were behind games like Grim Fandango,
such a good game, which has just been remastered and released.
It has.
on
it's on PlayStation
Network, all that sort of stuff.
Computer. It's actually been out for a few years now.
Yeah, I love it. Such a good game.
So good.
Yeah.
And games like that. So what that meant was that essentially your point-and-click adventure game. So this came out after the likes of, say, Zork. Many people might be familiar with Zork, where you would type in commands. So it was sort of like an interactive novel. You would get a readout of, you're at the west side of the house, and there's a letterbox, and it would describe to you your surroundings. So you could say things like "Go east," and then it would.
It was sort of like a generating like. The Choose Your Own Adventure books.
Absolutely.
Wasn't it? It was kind of like, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to hit the goblin with a chair. Like
an extension of the Dungeons and Dragons board game.
Yeah.
And you'd even have an inventory and things, and and that's where classic things like You've Been Eaten by a Groot came from and things like that. So the natural development of that was, of course, the big one was Myst. So what?
I still missed.
Yeah.
Oh, missed. I never
hasn't aged well.
Oh no, but the thing with and that was when there was still like FMV cutscenes. So instead of rendering cutscenes and stuff like that like they do now, where they sit there and animate cutscenes and things like that, what they used to do was put video, like it was all video cutscenes.
It was
into
that's what took up most of the room.
Into games. So it was this really weird like transition between the actual gameplay, and then you'd have like all these FMV cutscenes. Like even like the Command and Conquer games continued to do this even after everything had gone the other way, which is why you still have like videos of like for your cutscenes and stuff. Which
one of my favorite things to do when I was young was actually dig into the disc and into the files and find those cutscenes as separate files, and that's where you could find the soundtracks. So you could find the soundtracks usually in WAV format, and you could actually copy and paste them and put them into your, so you had the Age of Empires soundtrack, or whatever, or the sound effects and all that, and that's where you'd find like the hidden pre-made like sound bites, food please and all that and you could also, if you really wanted to and you wanted to be clever, you could that way you could actually put your own songs into the soundtracks, which is something that I used to do with Quake. Because how Quake worked was that the whole soundtrack was on the disc. So 9 Inch Nails, so Trent Reznor did the soundtrack for Quake. Very good soundtrack. It's exactly what you'd expect, heavy industrial metal, and you have to have the disc in for it because of. Well, I'm not actually sure. I mean, I assume it's because those files weren't installed into the computer when you installed the game, so it played off the disc like a CD. CD.
But I mean, this is also before the days of like MP3, yeah.
It was 97. So MP3, I think, was in its infancy.
So those files would have been massive. Like think about how much space it would have taken up. And again, this is when computers were, running with very little hard drive space and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So even if you'd wanted to, there probably wasn't the space on most home PCs at the time to actually download like a full
that's a good point.
A full soundtrack for a particular program. Like that would have taken up a huge amount of your hard drive space.
It would have. Actually, that's a really good point, because it reminds me, my first laptop was a Dell brick. It was a brick. It was
that's actually the model name. The Dell brick.
And 4 gig hard drive.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah,
that was huge.
That was huge. That was a late 90s, mid 90s.
That would have been huge.
I think I had ended up installing Windows Millennium Edition on it,
Ooh.
which was a bad idea. It should have stayed on Windows 98.
Yeah.
But and I remember when we got our new computer at the time, which ran Windows XP. This would have been about 2002.
Yep.
And it had a 60 gigabyte hard drive.
Yeah.
That was huge.
Yeah.
You know, and of course, I was constantly being told off because I had to delete games because the games were taking up too much room on the computer, slowing the computer down.
Yeah.
So, of course, so real estate for fitting games on a... And this is back when games were... You know, it's funny, we talk about it now. Back then, games were... Even the biggest games are about 200 megabytes.
Yep.
Which back then was huge. Now it's nothing. It's like a blip, you know.
Yeah.
I would argue...
To put that into context, if you download the YouTube app onto your phone, the YouTube app would be bigger than that.
That's crazy.
So the YouTube app, for memory, is about 260 odd megabytes.
Yeah.
Like, so the app just to run or to access YouTube is bigger than most games would have been.
But I also think that back then game developers were way more... They cared more about optimizing storage. So they actually went out of their way to make games. I don't think developers do that so much anymore. And you can tell because when you have to install 100 gigabytes of installation data for a console game like Red Dead Redemption, developers know they have heaps of space to deal with now, so they don't bother with clever compressing and things. Whereas these games had to compress games really well. Otherwise, people just simply couldn't.
But again, also your market, like because again, if your market was the PC market, they were also very aware that the majority of people weren't playing on home-built gaming PCs. Like that audience wasn't big enough for them to survive just on that. So they needed to access the general PC market, and the general PC market, people were not. You know, they didn't have huge amounts of space to play with. And so you had to make your games accessible to, you know, a family that was going to be running a middle-of-the-range PC. Like, because otherwise you were going to be screwed. And, you know, that went right through to games like Diablo, like all of those kind of, you know, games. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, and especially when you had games like, I think, Doom at one point and Fury 3 were pre-installed on computers. So they had to be small.
Yeah.
They had to be small because otherwise you're taking up too much room.
Yeah.
And I actually remember having to get, like, we had to get a new sound card.
Yeah.
You know, that's
sound
crazy.
cards.
You know, sound cards used to be a thing. And, and upgrading, you know, and then it became imperative to get a new graphics card to run things like Windows Vista, which was a nightmare of an operating system. And so these 90s adventure games, they did a lot with very little.
Yeah.
And so what they tended to do from a development point of view is the artists would create pre-made backgrounds.
Yep.
So they'd have backgrounds and they would navigate. Now, the early ones didn't have animations between shifting between different scenes. So you would click to either side of the screen, that would take you in the direction of where you wanted to go.
Yep.
And the icon would change, your cursor would change depending on whether it was interactable.
Yep.
And they would overlay objects, and you could usually tell if an object was interactable because it was slightly different from the background. You know, that was overlaid, and you could put it into your inventory or interact with it. And these early games like Myst and Riven and Zork Nemesis, and these were the really early, some really phenomenal ones like Starship Titanic, Obsidian, Time Machine, the Gabriel Knight games. These games were all very much in that same formula, and they were very, very, very clever. They were very story driven, although I don't know, Myst is very story driven. I think Myst is just how many frustrating, bizarre...
Myst confused the crap out of me. Yeah. Like the thing with Myst, I always found with Myst was that you never had any idea of what was going on.
No.
It was sort of the only game that I've ever played. I mean, you think something like Dark Souls is light on exposition. Like Myst, you had no idea what was happening. And so the idea was that you'd kind of work out what was happening as you went on through. I don't know. I finished that game. I still have no idea what happened.
No.
Like, and the puzzles were not like... it wasn't even really like you could find lots of things to help you work out what the puzzle was.
Oh no, the puzzles were ludicrous.
The puzzles
there was no there was logic in them to a degree, but really overall there was no.
But you couldn't even like generally within the game. You couldn't even find like things that would help you solve the puzzle. Like the puzzles were just brute force trial and error of like puzzles.
Absolutely.
Like that was all it was. You just kept doing them over and over and over again until something for some random reason worked. Like,
because my granddad introduced me to point and click adventure games. He was very big on those, and I was introduced at a very young age to a lot of like these incredible. Some of them were story driven, some of them were amazing, and one of my favorites was like The Neverhood. Just claymation. Very ahead of its time. It was actually the first ever game that was made almost entirely out of clay.
Yeah,
literally clay models and things, and 3D models were made out of them. And we moved at the start of this year, and I had boxes of these old games. And one of those was Orc Nemesis, which was also a very, very, very good game, and it also utilised FMV cutscenes and things. And I found old notes that my granddad had made with maps and things of it, and it was very, very cool. And also printed out guides from, I think, 1997.
See, there's your nostalgia factor.
Yeah, like that's the nostalgia. So, and this is before guides, where you'd have to go to the video game shop to buy guides. And there may have been very, very small internet communities at that point, but these games didn't have maps. Like, you couldn't pull up a map and it wasn't like a lot of really, really clever, like we take it for granted now, but it's so clever how games like God of War and Uncharted, how seamless between gameplay and cutscenes. It's really clever. This wasn't like that at all. So you would go through these games, they would quite often take hours and hours and hours, and you'd always get so there would always be one puzzle you'd get stuck on, and you'd get frustrated and leave the game for a while and come back and
talk to your friends about anybody else who had it, like what they'd done.
And it's when people started really experimenting. Like I really Starship Titanic, phenomenal game. So I don't know. Do you know Starship?
I haven't played Starship.
So Starship Titanic was a game produced by Douglas Adams.
Excellent. I want to play it now.
Yeah, phenomenal. And from a graphical, like the graphic design of the game, stunning. And again, point and click, but it had slightly animated sort of tuning. Like when you went to a different area, there was sort of a whoosh effect. It was very cool. And the whole design of it was phenomenal. You felt like you're on, and you kind of go on, so the crash lands into your home. And then this robot comes out, and it's I'll never forget the box art was stunning, because you saw the Starship Titanic, beautifully designed, and you would open the box, and it shows the bar inside the Starship Titanic, which I think was heavily influenced by the bar in The Shining. And underneath, and it shows the robots looking at you, and underneath it says, "We've just mastered the art of conversation." And the reason this game was so important back then was because you could have actual conversations by typing in and have conversations with the staff of the boat. So you could ask them questions, you could say things to them, you could type it out, and they would respond. All voice actors. In fact, you even had, I believe, John Cleese played the part of the ticking time bomb on Starship Titanic. So he'd be counting. And I think this would have been Douglas Adams' idea of trying to piss John Cleese off by going, okay, here's your script. It was literally him going 101, 102, and I'm not kidding, 100,000, 300, like, and just counting, and every now and then would say something funny. But literally his script would have just been numbers. He would have had to sit in a recording studio for hours counting. And it would have been, I just love it. It's so Douglas Adams to go, here you go.
That's
stuff
amazing.
you know, and it's all that Douglas Adams humor. You go through the game, you try and upgrade classes, and it's really cool. And you can like design your, you find objects to design your room and stuff. It's very, very cool. And you find all sorts of, and then the secrets that, the cracks start to show on the Titanic, the secrets and these things like, and very, 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 very good game. I'll have to play it again. So that would be a good one to Twitch stream. The original.
Well, there you go. Maybe we'll do that one. That's quite a
beautiful
cool
soundtrack. And
I think that, but this was an important feature of the point and click games, because this is what I always remember about point and click games, and I have a huge amount of nostalgia towards point and click games as well. They were the first games that I think I really got into in terms of like a gaming series. Like I've got to play all the games in this. I've got to, the Monkey Island series was that for me. All those kinds of things. Humor was a big part of the point and click games. again, Grim Fandango, Monkey Island, Day of the Tentacle, all of those kinds of things jump to mind when you start to think of that really kind of point and click humorous adventure game. And as you mentioned on the last podcast, you mentioned the fact that the original Pirates of the Caribbean movie was, sort of a script designed originally for a film adaptation of the Monkey Island games, of Curse of Monkey Island. Which I always loved. Like, I always loved that it was just sort of bumbling hero just kind of falls through like this adventure and kind of makes things work through the most random sort of like combinations of stuff. Like, I loved it, and I thought the humor was great. I thought the voice acting was always very good. I thought it was always very tongue in cheek. It was always, there was always sort of slight cynical commentary on things that were happening at the time. Like, the big theme of the Monkey Island games is the fact that piracy has moved away from its roots and become sort of like this commercialized, like trademarkable kind of thing, like where you've got like pirate theme parks and things like that, where real pirates are now like sort of playing fake versions of themselves and stuff. I always thought that was like really kind of cool and really kind of tongue-in-cheek. But what I loved about a game like Monkey Island or whatever was that the because it was so story-driven, because it was so humorous and all those kinds of things, it made you put up with the frustration of the puzzles sometimes whenever like they took forever to try and work out. You just get to that point where you just try combining everything in your inventory and jamming it into whatever it is that you're trying to do. You just
click everywhere on the screen. And
because it was always, the puzzles were never... What I loved about them was that the puzzles were never solved in the obvious way. So there was always like, you'd sit there and go, oh, there's a really obvious way that I could solve this puzzle. Like, for example, it might be getting through a locked door, in which case you're like, oh, all your gaming instincts go, you have to find the key, right? But like Monkey Island would be like, no, we're not doing keys. What we're doing is you have to light a candle and then feed a chicken itching powder so it sneezes and knocks the candle over into some like into some gunpowder, which sets off a cannon which blows a hole in the door. Like it would always be some really convoluted kind of way of even getting through the simplest of tasks, which I always really loved. I always thought it was it was very funny, and I have a huge amount of nostalgia for the LucasArts games. The LucasArts games really were. I didn't do Myst so much. Myst frustrated me, I think.
I thought Riven was a lot better.
Yeah, I didn't play Riven, and I didn't play Riven just largely because Myst frustrated me so much. I was like,
I'm not huge on Myst. I prefer the more story-driven. Myst wasn't really story-driven. It was, but again, though, we have to remember it was very much time and place. It was, I believe, 1994. Yeah, it was early. It was very early.
So, and that's the thing, because sort of unlike most other genres of gaming, where we've gone through cycles of gaming, right? So there was, the very early first-person shooters like Wolfenstein, like Doom, like Quake, like all those kind of games. And then first-person shooters sort of disappeared for a bit, and then obviously they came back, in the modern AAA scene with, Call of Duties and all those sorts of things. It sort of came back. Strategy games were big at one stage too, again, when like people, RTSs, StarCraft, Warcraft, Age of Empires, all of those kinds of things. And then they disappeared for a while, and they've sort of come back round again, and all that sort of stuff. The point and click adventure is sort of one that really, it really is solidly 90s. Like it's solidly 90s. It hasn't really come back in any big kind of way. There's the odd game every now and then that comes out that tries to do that or whatever. But it's never really gone through a reboot. You get the odd remasters and stuff like that. And, every time LucasArts may they rest in peace because they no longer exist, do they?
Yeah, which is sad. Who do we have to thank for that? Is that
EA bought LucasArts. LucasArts, a lot of you might also remember LucasArts was also the gaming studio that was responsible for most of your Star Wars games too. So they did, but they also did I'm pretty sure they did Force Unleashed and all that was LucasArts.
Did they?
Yeah, they published it. They also they did a lot the KOTOR games.
Oh, of course, phenomenal.
Knights of the Old Republic games, which were phenomenal Star Wars games, were all LucasArts. And the cancelled Star Wars game, the Star Wars, is it 3031 or whatever it was, you can see a whole heap of stuff on it online, it was in development and stuff like that, got cancelled when EA bought out
that's right,
bought out LucasArts. But I think every time LucasArts ever came on stage at gaming conventions and things like that, and we're announcing new games, there's always a big section of the audience that were sitting there going, please, another Monkey Island game, give us another Monkey Island game, give us another Grim Fandango, give us any of those kind of games, because they were amazing. The soundtracks were amazing, the stories were amazing, the puzzles were amazing. I
think it's why indie gaming's come back in a big way, because a lot of indie games are very do hark back to a lot of that stuff. The closest kind of thing I can really think of when it comes to modern point-and-click adventure games, games like Gone Home, which is a really good indie game. Quite short, but great. Yep. Really great.
Stanley Parable is kind of close.
Yes, Stanley Parable. Games that don't rely on... I think the draw of a lot of these games was that you didn't need to have quick reflexes. You could get lost in the... It's why I think, like my grandfather, he doesn't like a lot of those first... Well, of course, because you've got to have... It's all about twitch gaming. Yep. It's all about being very, very quick reaction times. I still struggle with a lot of those games because I played Quake religiously growing up, the original Quake, which I loved, and I think still to this day the best Quake game. I love the H.P. Lovecraft take on it, and before every bloody first-person shooter game for a while was all Space Marines, space, and it just got boring.
But that's why you like games like Amnesia and games like that too, because they kind of are a blend of that point and click
they are
adventure, but with a slightly more first person kind of
I guess Silent Hill, the Silent Hill
aspect on it. Those kind of games, and it's why we're both very keen to play Call of Cthulhu as well, the new Call of Cthulhu game, which is very along those kind of lines as well. Okay, well, if we think about a nostalgia factor, I want you, a little bit like we did with the films before, I want you to think of the game that gives you that nostalgia factor, that you sort of sit there and go, this is, like we did with the films, this is the game, is the game that I would introduce to anybody, that I think is amazing, and I want you to give me, this time I'm gonna get you to give me 2 rankings. I want to know how well you think it stands up today. Like could somebody who's never played it before, that sort of thing, pick it up and think this is amazing? So 10, anybody could pick this up today and think this is a masterpiece of a game. 0, no, my nostalgia factor really is the only thing that's sort of worth it. Like somebody would pick it up today and go, what is this?
So for me, that game would definitely be The Neverhood.
Oh, good call.
Yeah, I think The Neverhood was the first... It was the first point-and-click adventure game, I think, to my memory. Although I might have played some games when I was a bit younger that I don't recall, that my granddad introduced to me. And I would say The Neverhood. The Neverhood had a sick sense of humor. Like not sick as in like gross but like a really wicked sense of humor. Really funny, really oddball, really weird, really clever, really different. The soundtrack is phenomenal. The soundtrack is by, from memory, Terry Scott Taylor. Phenomenal soundtrack. very, very, very good. It's actually on, I think it's on, Apple Music or Spotify or whatever.
Yeah.
Very, very, very good. Very weird at times, but very, very good soundtrack. The atmosphere created, so all the ambient stuff going on. The atmosphere created in the Neverhood itself is phenomenal. The puzzles were pretty good. Sometimes frustrating, but usually pretty standard. The cutscenes were funny. The characters were funny. The lore behind it was great. Huge fan of the Neverhood.
Yeah.
Huge fan. And of course, being claymation as well, I think it's really great because it doesn't date it as poorly as a lot of the graphics back then. I think being claymation, you sort of... Yeah, it's not as dated because of that. It sort of kept its... it was one of those games that was slated by a lot of review sites. It was quite polarizing. I remember GameSpot giving it a terrible review, and this is back when GameSpot were relevant.
Going out swinging at GameSpot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether they're still going strong today. I don't know, but they gave it a really poor review. But the user reviews were like a 10. Like people came out like spitting about this horrible review.
Yeah.
It was like it was reviewed by someone who doesn't even like adventure games or who'd been lumped with this game to review. They were like, I want to review the new Medal of Honor or whatever, or Quake or whatever. So it's one of those. It is a cult favorite. It's a cult classic, cult favorite. Didn't sell anywhere near as many copies as it deserved to because of when it was released. It was released right on the cusp of the first-person shooter explosion of the late 90s. And it was just as the golden age. You could probably actually say that the Neverhood was at the end and was the death of the golden age of point-and-click adventure.
Yeah.
That was a pivotal moment, but it was so good. For me, from a nostalgic point of view, you want to go quality? I would say maybe an 8.
So you reckon it's an 8 in terms of quality? Like
I think so. I mean, the thing is, I struggle to separate nostalgia with it. I do think it's a very good game.
Well, you see, and I think you hit on a really good point in terms of what makes it appealing in a way that perhaps other games wouldn't be appealing, like other older games wouldn't be appealing, is that it is claymation, which is so different to sort of anything that's out at the moment. I don't know of any, now happy to be wrong here, but I don't know of any modern claymation game. I can't think of any game that's used claymation. And I still think claymation is really cool.
Oh,
and for those of you younger people who've never seen claymation, I fully suggest you jump on something like YouTube and you look up like Neverhood, or you look up Clay Fighter, or any of those kind of like claymation games.
Chicken Run.
Yeah, they were amazing.
Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah. So like Wallace and Gromit, but obviously in a gaming style, a gaming style. I think like that. While those films are like that, I think that I still think that in a gaming setting, it had its own unique style outside of claymation films like Nightmare Before Christmas or Wallace and Gromit or those kind of things, which I think look a little bit I want to say cleaner, like the Neverhood and
higher budget probably.
Yeah, like Neverhood and stuff like that, and Clay Fighter and things like check them out because they are really awesome.
Neverhood also built an entirely new universe. Like things like Chicken Run and Wallace and Gromit were built within a human universe. Or a chicken universe. But the Neverhood was building a completely new world. Which again differentiates it from. I would say nostalgia factor 10. On the actual quality of the game, maybe an 8. I would tend to go higher again in context. So in the context of a point and click adventure game, I'd go 10. In the context of a game, maybe an 8.
It's still a ringing endorsement. Like 8 out of 10 is a good review.
Well, for a game that's so old now. That's saying how it stands up today. I think I played it a few years ago. Still really, really, really great. But
like for me, it would be. I better get this right. Curse of Monkey Island, which is the one with the demon pirate LeChuck, which is the one where they. If it's not, I apologize. It's one of the Monkey Islands. I'm pretty sure it's the Curse of Monkey Island. It's the one with demon pirate LeChuck. It is. It's phenomenal. It was the first one It was the first one where they moved into a slightly more modern era. Like, so the old ones were all very, that very Leisure Suit Larry kind of look, that really old school kind of pixelated kind of look. This was the first one they moved in and was like all cell shaded, like
it was all cartoon, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was all cartoon, and it was beautiful. Like the backgrounds were beautiful. I still remember the big clouds that were like swirls. It was like such a beautiful. It's the one that he begins in a Dodgem car in the water. Like it's such a good game. It was just so well put together. It was incredibly funny. You could pick it up even if you'd never played any of the other Monkey Islands. You could pick it up and kind of work out what was going on. It was paced really well. The puzzles were really good. I would say nostalgia factor again for me is relatively high with this one. It was the thing that really got me into point and click adventure games. However, again, I would say that actually it stands up as a game. Because of the graphical style, because of how good the score is, because of how good the script writing and voice acting was, and that sort of stuff. I think it's a game that you could pick up now and still find very amusing. It's a game that you could pick up now, and it would stand up. Like you'd go, it's still beautiful. It's still
art style will always outlive games that focus purely on trying to create the most realistic graphics. And you see this all the time. You saw it with Zelda, Ocarina of Time. You saw it with see it with cel shaded games. That's
actually probably a good call, because Ocarina of Time or whatever, it's probably a very similar graphical style to it. So it does, and you still look at those games and go, wow, that's a beautiful game.
Yeah, whereas games where they're going for, like, a lot of first-person shooters date very quickly. At the time, you think, wow, that's amazing. Games that try to achieve the most, like games by Quantic Dream, like Heavy Rain and things.
Ooh, yeah.
At the time, look really, really good. I don't know. I haven't played it since. Maybe it still looks really good, but I feel like that Uncanny Valley is going to catch up with it pretty quickly.
Yeah. However, you see, I almost put, like, Quantic Dream games into a different. I mean, they're almost a different subcategory all of their own.
Yeah.
Like you're talking Heavy Rain, Fahrenheit, those kind of games. Those are brilliant games, brilliant story driven. Weird as hell.
Haven't played Detroit Become Human yet.
I haven't played it either.
Oh, that could be a good one.
So far we're going to be Twitch streaming Detroit Become Human. We're going to be Twitch streaming Starship Titanic. Maybe we'll do a Monkey Island as well.
Yes, I'd love to do Monkey Island. It's been a long time since I played Monkey
Island. We can introduce, maybe we could do a Neverhood as well. Introduce you all to old school point and click adventures. Again, I think it's a game that stands up without the nostalgia factor. Even though there's a huge nostalgia factor there for me, I think it stands up anyway. So segueing a little bit away from games. I think the other thing that, especially over this period of time, again, because we've just come out of Christmas, for us, Christmas is still ahead of us, but by the time you listen to this, Christmas is behind us. Christmas is another one of those times where music becomes a big nostalgia factor. Like, it's the only period of time we listen to Christmas carols, and Christmas carols
even then it's
are
too much.
Legitimately awful. The majority of them are legitimately awful.
I don't understand people who go out of their way to listen to Christmas carols.
Oh, I know. Again, I worked in retail for far too long to go out of my way to listen to Christmas carols.
Hideous.
But people do. Like, they feel it's not Christmas unless you've got, Bing Crosby singing,
It's Christmas, everyone. It's Christmas. Wow, it's Christmas. Christmas.
Don't they know it's Christmas after
well, if we didn't before, we do now.
But nostalgia music. And I don't really want to talk about Christmas carols because,
they suck.
Okay, no, very quickly, what's your favourite Christmas carol?
Christmas Will Break Your Heart by LCD Sound System.
Okay.
I do have a soft spot for Merry Christmas, War Is Over by John Lennon and co.
Good call.
Yeah.
Good call.
I do have a soft spot for that.
Of the Christmas music that you're likely to listen to, because let's face it, no retail store has LCD Sound System on play.
The Pogues.
Oh, Fairy Tale of New York.
Of course.
Yeah, that's a pretty good shout.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good shout. I'd do Fairy Tale of New York.
Yeah.
The only Christmas song I know with swearing in it.
Yeah. It doesn't. Yeah, it's a bit problematic now, isn't it? It's
you
quite
know me, I'm a
problematic.
bit of a Pogues fan.
Yeah.
So like, that's a good shout.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, if we go real traditional Christmas carol, mine's probably God Rest You Merry Gentlemen.
Oh, yeah.
And the only reason I say that is because it's one of the only Christmas carols in a minor key, which I like.
It's dark.
It's dark or foreboding. Always makes me think Dickens. God Rest You Merry Gentlemen. Always makes me think.
See, it's funny because
Christmas Carol. Or,
yeah. See, for me, music. I have weird music that for me I associate with Christmas for some reason. Like I really like
some Slayer.
Placebo and no.
Hey.
No. I'm not knocking Placebo.
I love me some Placebo.
I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying it.
Hey.
For me, I associate I love Tom Waits' Closing Time, the album, because for me it feels no.
Every
Songs
time.
like Martha and Old 55, and so it feels like you're in New York in the middle of winter when it's snowing and you're inside a warm bar or something. For some reason, Coattail Twins. Twins
Okay.
around Christmas. I think it's because it's dreamy and it's real I don't want to use words that are going to make me sound like a dick, but ethereal. But it feels like that. It's that dream pop, shoegazy kind of. But it's albums like Heaven or Las Vegas. For some reason, I get into playing them again around Christmas. That's sort of my jam.
So I should say the reason that we're kind of talking about this is because before we were listening to some Nick Cave. Both Ant and I were listening to some Nick Cave.
Very Christmas.
Very Christmassy. Yes, bit of Jubilee Street. So we were both listening to some Nick Cave, and it made us think about stuff that we listened to that. I'm not going to say not a lot of other people listen to, but stuff that we listen to that sort of holds a special place. So I'm going to ask you a really hard question for you, Anthony, because I know this is going to be a really hard question for you. So Ant is we both love music, but Ant listens to a huge variety of music. So I want you to pick, Anthony, one album that you listen to almost for nothing else but nostalgia factor, where you go, okay, this album might not legitimately be a great album, but it's something that I just can't put away. It's something that comes out every night, and I have to listen to it because it sort of takes me back every time I listen to this album. And I kind of like an album that's not here's a great album that
I know what you mean. I know what you
you're
mean.
literally listening to it because it was a time and a place.
Can I pick two?
Yes, you can, because I'm going to pick two as well.
This is a rough question. The Ego Has Landed by Robbie Williams. Which is a compilation of his first two albums.
Good shout.
So it's songs like No Regrets, Lazy Days,
Angels,
Millennium, Angels.
All that sort of stuff,
huge on nostalgia. I was a huge Robbie Williams fan. Still am. I actually saw him live a couple of years ago.
I was going to say that would be years ago, that was my guilty pleasure album, was the Millennium album. That was my guilty pleasure album, back in the day when I was young enough for it not to be cool to listen to Robbie Williams, but it was kind of my guilty pleasure album.
I reckon, actually, just on that note as well, of guilty pleasures, we talk about guilty pleasure and stuff. I don't believe in guilty pleasures. I think it's dumb. I think you either because I'm guilty of saying it as well.
Yeah.
You either like something or you don't, and you shouldn't feel bad for liking something. I mean, for God's sake, it's all subjective.
But this is something I think too you come to as you get older, right? Yeah. When you're younger, there's definitely guilty. There's definitely things that you're into that you're like,
because you care about what other people think.
Yeah. As you get older, you're like, screw it, I like it. This is what I I think I've said to you before. My guilty pleasure is wrestling. I love watching WWE, and that's my.
Well, I like pleasure. And I love Carly Rae Jepsen's Jispin. Carly Rae Jepsen. I love her album Emotion. Emotion. Phenomenal album. Very, very, very good. Very good album.
Okay.
Very good album.
So
Check it
now
out.
that you've given a plug for Kylie Rae Jepsen,
Gibson?
What is Gibson? What is your so you
I had two.
you had two, so your first one is some Robbie Williams.
Yeah.
So I want to know again. Okay, I want you to give me a ranking on our scale again. I want you to give me a ranking. So we already know that you're listening to this for nostalgia factor. I want you to give me a ranking of where you think this album sits, like legitimately as an album today. Like if you were to pick it up for the first time today and listen to it, what would you give it?
You know what?
Remove the nostalgia factor.
No, that's difficult. I actually think, I think Robbie Williams' music is phenomenally produced. It's great pop. I think Guy Chambers produced a lot of that music, and he's a phenomenal producer. In fact, I think he was involved in the Take That days.
I was going to say, can I
Was
say
he a member of Take That?
Can I
with Robbie
say
Williams?
maybe? Can I say I think that like Robbie Williams' early stuff was good. Like was really good, and there was some really well written pop songs in there and stuff like that. By the time we get to like Rock DJ and stuff,
See, I like that album. I like singing. No, do you know what's really good on that album?
nothing.
The last song. No, listen, The Road to Mandalay, the final song, phenomenal song. Phenomenal. And it's like nothing else on that album.
Yeah. Everything else in that album's rubbish.
No, not true. Not true.
Sorry,
I remember staying up late to watch the new Rock DJ music video.
Oh my
That was
God.
mind-blowing at the time.
He takes off
Very
his muscles and stuff.
controversial. Yeah.
No. Sorry. I'm jumping in on your thing here.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Again, probably an 8. But with nostalgia, a 10. It hits me every time I listen to it. It goes boom, I'm back into it. I love it.
Okay.
I love it.
Okay. So album number 2.
This is, for me, nostalgic, but it's also, I think, just a phenomenal album. It's one of the very first albums that I really got into when I was really young, was Automatic for the People by R.E.M.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, one of the first albums I ever really listened to as an album. The whole way through. Amazing album. And it was at a transitional period for R.E.M. as well. It's quite somber. It's actually a really somber album.
Yeah.
With some upbeat moments like Sidewinder. That's about it. Man on the Moon, Night Swimming, some phenomenal songs. Every song on that album is phenomenal.
What's that song I hate by R.E.M.?
Shiny Happy People.
Yes.
Horrible song.
It's an atrocious
R.E.M. are one of the
song.
greatest American bands of all time.
that is an atrocious
Shiny
song.
Happy People is awful.
It's an atrocious song.
Awful song.
It
on one of their best albums, on Out of Time, which is a very good
almost
album.
single-handedly put me off R.E.M. That song.
Yeah. And Out of Time's a very good album. It gets overshadowed, I think, a lot by Automatic. But It got big because of course, Losing My Religion became a big hit for them on MTV and stuff. But R.E.M.'s, they've got so many great albums. But Automatic for the People came out the year I was born too.
That's a great album.
It is.
Regardless of nostalgia factor,
is.
it's a great album.
Yeah, it is.
So that's going to be another like 9 or 10, like because it's a good album.
It's the album that they started getting a little bit orchestral with their arrangements as well, and it had a huge influence on Kurt Cobain at the time of Nirvana. So like at the time, and that's actually one of the reasons why In Utero used a lot of strings, was because he was heavily influenced by Automatic for the People. Yeah. And Kurt Cobain started sort of a relationship with Michael Stipe. They chatted a lot, and I think Michael Stipe helped him through a lot of stuff. So, and there's reason to believe that Nirvana's next album might have been a really stripped back, acoustically driven, and with a bit of strings.
Well, certainly when you listen to their MTV acoustic session,
oh goodness, yes,
like it sort of seems to suggest that they might be sort of leaning that way, like they might have leant towards a more bluesy, because I love that basically they just did covers.
Oh, I love Puppets,
that.
Lead Belly, amazing.
I love that they just essentially did covers through that whole thing.
And they struck that was a rigmarole. That whole concert was a rigmarole. The whole lead up to that.
Yeah. And
telling them, the MTV execs, that they weren't going to do Smells Like Teen Spirit and stuff.
They
were like, we're doing our own thing, and they were left to it, and it almost all fell apart.
Yeah. Because that's a legitimately brilliant album. That Unplugged and MTV Unplugged. That is probably Nirvana's best album. Like it is. So
that in utero, I think.
Because that's and if they were going in that direction, I think they would have been phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay, so to make for people. Cool.
So what about you, James? What's your...
So actually it segues quite nicely because albums that I listen to purely probably for a nostalgia factor. The first one of them is Nevermind.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Like, I mean, I cannot sort of think of an album other than the Cranberries album that had Zombie on it.
Yeah.
Which I think was just the Cranberries, wasn't it? I think it was just
a
subtitled album. Yeah. But other than that, I can't think of a album that more sort of sums up my youth than Nevermind.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I mean, I was hugely into grunge whenever I was younger. I was the right age, all that sort of stuff. It's aged badly. Like it
Has
really,
it? Has it though?
I think so. If I go back and I listen to Nevermind, like for example, a lot of it, there are some good songs. Like there are a couple of good songs in there, but largely you kind of go, like it wouldn't be an album that I would pick up now and go, that's great. Like, you know, I'm going to listen to that over and over again.
I think Kurt had problems with the way it was produced. It was too overly... All the edges were shaved off. It was too smooth.
Yeah.
And I think it's why he went to like Steve Albini for New to Road.
I mean, it's songs like Smells Like Teen Spirit, like, you know, all that kind of stuff. Like it's stuff that you look back on, you go, okay, it was a time and a place.
But
like,
we've also
heard
it ad nauseum. Smells Like Teen Spirit is undoubtedly a great song, but it's like your Stairway to Heavens and things. It's like, I will gouge out my eardrums if I have to hear American Pie by Don McLean again. Like, there are some songs I can appreciate. I never want to hear them again.
Yeah.
It's just...
it's a bit like that. And Nevermind is a bit like that. And I've got so many albums that... Like to me, actually, I'd give it about a 50-50. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I think that... obviously, I listen to it a lot. I mean, I don't mean I listen to it a lot. I mean that when I do listen to it, I listen to it for a nostalgia factor. I don't. It wouldn't be something that I would go out and buy today. Like I wouldn't be like, that's really me. Like
I think stripped. I really like Nirvana's stripped back stuff. I think that when they went quiet was really neat. Like stuff like "Come As You Are," which is not bombastic.
Yeah, like really cool. If I was to go and listen to Nirvana. Like I would go and listen to the MTV Unplugged. Like it's a great album, and I think it's probably Nirvana at their best. Like because
they were always great at melodies.
Yeah, but as an album that I would listen to for nostalgia factor, Nevermind. Yeah, it just sums up my...
They'll take me back to my angsty teenage years as well.
Yeah.
Nevermind by Nirvana and 10 by Pearl Jam and albums by like...
The Black Album by Metallica.
Yeah, Super
like
Unknown by...
Sandman on there.
Soundgarden.
Mudhoney.
Yeah.
Now you're speaking my language.
The Breeders.
Yeah, like those are all... Like that's very definitely... That would very definitely be one of mine.
Ooh, can I throw in a special mention?
Yes.
Surfer Rossa by the Pixies.
Great album.
Amazing album.
Great album.
It's actually the album that... It's the reason why, just to tie it in with the Nirvana thing, it's the reason why Kurt wanted Steve Albini to produce a new Rogue after he heard Steve Albini produce Surfer Rossa, which was one of his favourite albums. Surfer Rossa is incredible.
When I look back, what's hard for me to separate is it's hard for me to separate albums that were great, because around that period of time there were a lot of, legitimately great albums coming out, like some great music. And there's stuff that I know that you're not so into that I like
it's okay,
stuff like Use Your Illusion and stuff like that by Guns N' Roses.
Oh no, I like that. They're probably a bit overblown and
but that's, they were legitimately great albums. And
which
stuff
one
like
or two?
Both of them. They're both brilliant.
Cut half the songs of both of them and stuck them into one album. Axl Rose being...
it's no Chinese democracy. I would legitimately go back and listen to those albums. Like without even... yes, okay, nostalgia, but I would listen to them because I still enjoy the music on them. I'm trying to think of another album that is very much nostalgia for me, but not again, I probably wouldn't pick it up and be like, that's it. Actually, probably the Cranberries.
Yeah.
The Cranberries. I mean, that was again the sound of my early teenage years. It's when Zombie had just come out, and that was massive. Songs like Linger, that sort of stuff. Again, it's probably not something that I'd now go, oh yeah, I'm going to go listen to some Cranberries. If it wasn't if it didn't have that nostalgia factor. And I understand that people will be like, oh, it's a great album. It is. But again, as I said, my musical tastes, I suppose, have just moved on quite a lot from the Cranberries and Nirvana, but I still listen to those albums.
Yeah, I still appreciate that kind of music, but I've moved on to a lot more sort of electronic and ambient and a bit of...
A lot happier stuff like Nick Cave, yeah.
yeah. Actually, talking of nostalgia, I think for me, Selected Ambient Works 85 to 92 by FX Twin, I'd still just put that on, and it just that first opening...
See, you introduced me to FX Twin, so I can't claim nostalgia factor with that. I can claim I love it, but you introduced me to it. It's like Boards of Canada.
Boards of Canada, yeah. Boards of Canada, phenomenal. But it's music for the... it's just...
That's your homework, listeners, is to listen to some Boards of Canada.
Listen to Music Has the Rights to Children and GeoGaddy.
Yeah. Phenomenal music.
Yeah. Very, very good.
Phenomenal music.
Yeah.
Okay. So let us know what you think in the chat. What are your favourite games? If you have a favourite point and click adventure, if you have a game that really stands out for you. And let us know about your album. What is your album that you listen to now? Again, not looking for greatest albums of all time or your favorite album of all time. We're looking for that album that you have in your record collection or on your
Spotify playlist,
your Spotify playlist or whatever that is there purely for nostalgia reasons, purely because it takes you back to that time. To that place, let us know, and we'll have a bit of a chat about them in the next podcast.
Yeah, and you can tell us on Instagram or Facebook at Esoterica Podcast, and you can tell us on Twitter at Esoterica Pod. So feel free to reach out, and we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
And I guess from the Esoterica crew and family, Happy New Year.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.